even those Harvard students we had on the show who were put on that hire list, blacklist, and had trucks driving around Harvard, signed a letter essentially saying the reason for the October 7th attack was the Israeli occupation and brutal treatment of the Palestinians, but they didn't praise Hamas or call for the murder of Jews either. Almost nobody who lost their job in these high-profile cases did anything remotely like that. Now, again, this sort of thing is exactly what has been condemned by people on the right for years. Here is, as just one of many examples, a tweet by Christopher Rufo, who I think is one of the most influential right-wing activists, in December 20th, 2021. Quote, outrageous. This brave teacher stood against critical race theory indoctrination in his school district, and they fired him for it. And then here you see the quote from the teacher, Tony Kennett. Indianapolis Public Schools just fired me for, quote, sharing that IPS recorded children in required racial justice sessions, not sending IPS the personnel info, quoting Dr. Payne's racist comments to students, sharing public files. So the idea was, no one was saying there, oh, school districts have the right to fire whoever they want, including teachers who express views on controversial issues. No, the idea was, this is outrageous. Here from the New York Post, June 4th, 2020, NBA voice Grant Napier was unjustly fired over, quote, all lives matter truth. Grant Napier, 32 years, the TV voice of the Sacramento Kings, is a goner this week, fired from his gig as a Sacramento sports talk host as the TV voice of the Kings TV broadcast because he's a racist. Perhaps. There's no evidence, like Hillary Clinton and presumably millions before him, Napier was naive to the new presumption that, quote, all lives matter is now considered by some to be a racist response to the Black Lives Matter movement. But of course, millions of Americans do consider and did consider all lives matter as a response to the Black Lives Matter movement to be racist by denying that there's a particular need for Black Americans to have attention called to the violence directed at them. And there was no idea from the right, oh, well, people are entitled to fire him if they want for a phrase that many people now consider racist. No, it was outrageous. It was indicative of the repression we face. And again, I largely agreed with the people critiquing that. It's just I didn't change my mind on October 7th when it came to Israel. Here from the Daily Wire, February 12th, 2021, Ben Shapiro says, Gina Carano firing, part of a movement to, quote, expel half of America. Daily Wire editor emeritus Ben Shapiro ripped the mass media company Disney and the, quote, hard left on Thursday after actress Gina Carano was fired from her role on the Star Wars TV series The Mandalorian. I'm sure there's going to be fanatical fans of Star Wars angry that I didn't know that series. Apologies in advance. Disney fired Carano on Wednesday over an image the actress posted to her Instagram depicting a Jewish woman running from Nazi guards with the caption, Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Shapiro highlighted the incident on his podcast, The Ben Shapiro Show, on Thursday as an example of the cancel culture that is infecting leading institutions in the United States. He said that Carano's firing is, quote, indicative of where we are in the culture, and it is a terrible moment for American culture. Quote, social movements have consequences, and we are now in the middle of a mass social movement to expel half the American population from the body politic, Shapiro said. So do you see here how there was this very pervasive sense that getting people fired for political views that many people in the United States consider to be offensive was dangerous for the United States. It was toxic and unhealthy. Where is all that? Where are all those people? Now that so many people are losing their jobs for calling for a ceasefire of a war, or deciding that they think the United States is supporting the wrong side, or that they support Palestinians and don't want to fund the Israeli war. Where are all the cancel culture articles about how terrible this is for America, that people lose their jobs if they express views contrary to the U.S. government and its policies? Here in 2021 in Commentary magazine, Barry Weiss, another person who was one of the leaders and still is, when it comes to some issues of the importance of free speech and free debate, here was her magnus opus on this. question where she said, "We got here because of cowardice. We get out with courage. Say no to the woke revolution." And it was a long article on how one of the worst things you can do as a country is create a climate where certain views are off limits to the point where you get fired and have your reputation destroyed and you're socially vilified for expressing them. And this is what she wrote when describing how terrible this environment is in 2021. Quote, "So the tools themselves are not just replaced but repudiated, and in doing so, persuasion, the purpose of argument, is replaced with public shaming. Moral complexity is replaced with moral certainty. Facts are replaced with feelings. Ideas are replaced with identity. Forgiveness is replaced with punishment. Debate is replaced with deplatforming. Diversity is replaced with homogeneity of thought. Inclusion with exclusion. As Douglas Murray has put it, quote, "The problem is not that the sacrificial victim is selected. The problem is that the people who destroy his reputation are permitted to do so by the complicity, silence, and slinking away of everyone else." I agree with that paragraph. I believe a healthier society is one where people are engaged when they express views that many find offensive, not when they're fired and have their reputations destroyed for it. And I thought that before October 7th, and I also thought that after October 7th. Here is another person, Dave Rubin. You may remember the case of James Damore. This actually occurred before Me Too, before the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the people who was a big cause celeb was David Shore. He was a Democratic Party consultant who worked at a think tank, and he said he thinks nonviolent protests are more effective than protests that use violence, starting the civil rights movement. And it was interpreted as a criticism of the Black Lives Matter movement. And he was fired, and he was turned into a complete martyr. Oh my God. This shows America is ruined if someone like David Shore gets fired for expressing his opinion just because millions of people find it offensive. David Shore turned out perfectly fine. He has a very thriving career. More so than ever, just like most of these people who built their careers based on this platform, based on this cause. But that was the idea, was there's nothing worse than a country that fires people for expressing their dissident views. But the case that was one of the first was the case of James Damore. He was an employee at Google, and he sent an internal post in a message board that was deemed misogynistic about why women can't succeed in certain fields. And he became the symbol of everything wrong with America. How can you fire somebody for expressing a view because you consider it misogynistic? You should debate him and engage with him, not fire him. No one was saying, oh, Google's a private company, they have the right to fire him if they want. They were saying, this is dangerous. We have to stop this. And here was Dave Rubin putting James Damore on his show so they could commiserate on the injustice of all of this.
Look at it.
Ugh, it's harmful. Don't look at it. That's what executives were saying. I mean, that's incredible.
And also, there were a ton of memes within the company just talking about, how horrible this was and just blasting me as a person.
Now, was there any retribution on those people? We'll get to you actually getting fired and called into the office. But you, as far as everything that I read in this document, which I did read, you didn't attack anyone personally. You go out of your way not to stereotype. People can argue with, your conclusions or all that. But you were being attacked personally by people then within the company. Was there any retribution from the...
Oh my God. People didn't even want to debate him. They just wanted him gone. They wanted him fired. They wanted him disciplined. And the people who should have been disciplined, according to Dave Rubin, were the people trying to stifle free debate inside Google. Can't have people getting fired for expressing offensive views just because other people are offended. Toughen up. We need free speech and free debate in this country, not people getting fired for their offensive views. And now you have this pile of careers destroyed since October 7th for people who criticize Israel. And one of the things I heard from Dave Rubin, this same exact Dave Rubin, was when France issued a nationwide ban on pro-Palestinian protests. while allowing pro-Israel protests to continue. Meaning, you're allowed to go out on the street and protest in favor of French policy, which is to support Israel. What you're barred criminally from doing is going out on the street and protesting against the French position by having a pro-Palestinian protest. Dave Rubin said in a tweet, maybe there's hope for the West after all. Somebody who built his career saying the reason why the West is collapsing is because we don't allow free debate. We fire people when they express offensive views. He was very angry about it when it came to people he agreed with or felt an affinity for, like James Damore. But Israel critics who get fired, that's the salvation of the West. Now, I should note we invited Dave Rubin on our show early on to come on and talk about all this. He unfortunately couldn't. He's been on several other shows where the hosts were much more agreeable with his views. Hopefully he will come on. He said once the scheduling issues pass, he would be happy to do it. So far that hasn't happened. He's welcome on the show anytime. I'd love to have him on to explore this, try and reconcile all this. But just to show you how repressive things have gotten, let me show you this. Here is David Jacobs, and he's very angry about the following. About a question on an exam at Toronto Metropolitan University. So, just to be clear, it's not an elementary school, it's not a junior high, it's not a high school for children. It's a university for adults, for adult college students, where you go to learn about the world, to debate issues that are difficult. It's one of the things you go to college to learn how to do. Remember all that? No safetyism at college. College students don't have the right to be shielded from ideas that make them uncomfortable. They have to confront those. That's what learning to be an adult is all about. How many times have you heard that? And yet, look at this. A Jewish student, not a child, an adult, took a picture of this anti-Semitic bile. In today's upside-down world, the student will likely be reprimanded and the professor will get tenure. Here's the thing that is apparently anti-Semitic, bile. The question is, the term pinkwashing refers to. So the point of the question is, you're at college and there's this term, pinkwashing, that gets used in political debates all the time about Israel. There's been op-eds in the New York Times with the headline pinkwashing in the title. It's a common term that pro-Palestinian activists use. And so the point of this question is to be able to prove that you know the definition of pinkwashing. You don't have to agree with the term. You don't have to agree with the meaning of it. You just have to prove that you know what it means. I think like going to college, one of the things you want to do is learn and prove that you're able to explain other people's views, even if you don't agree with them. Like, go in, summarize the political perspective of this political scientist or this philosopher. You don't get to say, I'm not going to do that because I don't agree with this view that you're asking me to summarize. No, you summarize the view to prove that you understand the argument, and then you're free to disagree with it or agree with it. Just because you're asked to summarize it and prove you understand the argument doesn't mean you have to agree with it or that you're forced to agree with it. So the question is, what does pinkwashing refer to? And you see there the highlighted answer, which is the correct definition of this term as people use it. Quote, the state of Israel uses gay rights as a distraction from Palestinian human rights questions. And that's exactly what pinkwashing means. If you say, and trust me, this happens to me every day, hey, look, the Israelis are killing a historically high amount of civilians in this bombing campaign, people will come and say, what about the fact that they have gay bars in Tel Aviv but not in Gaza? The ultimate non sequitur. Oh, I know you're angry that we're killing all these people and we're illegally occupying their land, but we're better on LGBT issues than they are. That's called pinkwashing. You don't have to agree that Israel does that. You don't have to agree with the critique. You just have to be able to summarize the argument. That's what college is for. That is what has these people worked up. How is that anti-Semitic? Even if you don't agree with it, it's a criticism of the Israeli government. It doesn't mention Jews. Criticizing the Israeli government is not anti-Semitic. Jews do it all the time. I do it all the time. Israelis do it all the time. And they want to get this person fired. Here is Jonathan Kay. He's a writer at Quillette, which is a magazine in the UK that's almost about nothing other than defending the virtues of free discourse, free thought, and free speech, they claim. And here's what Jonathan Kay wrote, who's a vocal supporter of Israel. Quote, a source from TMU, the university, has sent me the identity of the lecturer who did this. A complaint has been launched against him with the administration. I mean, that is the ultimate tattletale behavior. This is a PhD student teaching a course. He wanted to make sure his students understood the term pinkwashing in the context of this new war, this Israel-Gaza war, where that term is used a lot. You don't have to agree with the term. You just have to show you understand what it means. And they're trying to get the guy fired on the grounds that it's somehow anti-Semitic to ask adult college students to summarize what is meant by the term pinkwashing. Not just to object to the question, but to want the person fired. These people, whatever they are, have nothing to do with free speech as I've ever understood that concept. Now, there have been people, I should note, not many, but it has spilled over into the pro-Israel side as well. Here from the LA Times, a Jewish professor at USC confronted pro-Palestinian students. He's now barred from campus. I saw the video. There was a group of students, Palestinian students. This professor is Jewish. He's a vocal supporter of Israel. And he went over to them and was offended by their protest. And here's what happened. Quote, the economics professor's interaction with students that day ended with the 72-year-old Strauss, who was Jewish, declaring, quote, Hamas are murderers. That's all they are. Everyone should be killed, and I hope they are all killed. That's a perfectly legal, free speech sentiment to express on a college campus. No violence involved, no threats. Within hours, Strauss's comments were posted online, shared and reshared on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Within a day, an associate dean told Strauss that he was on paid administrative leave, barred from campus, and that he would no longer teach his undergraduates this semester. Within the week, a petition demanding that USC fire Strauss for his, quote, racist, xenophobic behavior and comments that, quote, promote and incite violence had collected more than 6,500 signatures. I have no problem vehemently condemning the notion that he should be punished for that, especially at a college campus, an academic setting that is the part of society we set aside where we say, this is the part of society where you're supposed to question everything. That's why professors have tenure. They can't be fired. They have academic freedom. It's the place in society where we specifically want every taboo to be questioned, every claim to be debated or debatable. So no, I don't think this professor at USC should be fired or punished for having said, I think all Hamas terrorists are evil and they all should be murdered and I hope they all are killed. But I have credibility to object to that because I object to that in every case, not just where it's my views being attacked or targeted. And if you aren't willing to stand up and object to this spate of firing since October 7th by Israel critics in the United States, if you believe the free speech rights of Americans should be eroded to protect this foreign country, Benjamin Netanyahu told Elon Musk in September, we need a balancing of free speech and the protection against hate speech, not in Israel, but in the United States. There are people who want to erode free speech in the West, in the United States, in defense of this foreign country. I'm not one of them. I want to preserve free speech. I don't want people to be fired for criticizing Israel. I don't want people being fired for telling pro-Palestinian protesters they think all Hamas terrorists should be killed. These are all adults. We are a much healthier society when we can freely debate and express our views without fear of being fired. That's what Dave Rubin built his career on. That's what Barry Weiss built her career on. That's what Ben Shapiro built his career on. That's what so many rich political pundits and journalists claim they believed in until October 7th happened and everything changed. And now there's all of these people who got fired, not because they said, I want Israel off the map or I want all Jews murdered, as they all claim. And even if they were saying that, that would obviously be protected free speech, no question about it, but that isn't what they said. They said things like, I want a ceasefire, I believe Israel is the wrongful party here. I don't believe the United States should give weapons to and finance Israel's wars. And if you're not willing to stand up and defend the rights of people to think that and to say that without having their careers destroyed or their reputations vilified, please, please just don't ever pretend again for the rest of your life that you believe in free thought, free discourse, that you oppose cancel culture, or anything else like that, because you have zero credibility to make that claim. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.